Hello. Tonight you drift slowly into a world where moonlight rests upon ancient water, and where entire kingdoms quietly rise beside rivers that seem older than memory itself. You begin your journey in Mesopotamia, the land between two patient rivers where soft winds move through reeds and distant lamps glow like sleepy stars. Somewhere beyond the dark horizon, empires are already beginning to dream about this peaceful place. You walk beside narrow irrigation canals glowing softly beneath the silver moonlight. Small reed houses rest close to the water while gentle wind moves quietly through the marshes and palm trees above. Tall date palms sway with slow grace like weary dancers after midnight. Even the frogs near the riverbanks sound unusually calm, as though the entire land has forgotten how to hurry. Far away from modern highways and crowded cities, you enter a land shaped almost entirely by water and mud. The people living here know the moods of the rivers the way sailors know the moods of the sea. Every season carries familiar rhythms, and every flooded field promises another harvest. Somewhere nearby, a sleepy donkey complains into the darkness with the dramatic energy of someone denied a second breakfast. So, before you get completely comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. But only if you truly enjoy what we're creating here, and while you settle into this quiet journey, feel free to share your local time and location in the comments below. Perhaps someone else listening tonight is hearing these ancient rivers beside a rainy window in Chicago, a midnight apartment in Seoul, or a peaceful village road somewhere beneath another distant moon. Now, slowly dim the lights. Perhaps turn on a fan, letting the steady hum of the air fill the room. And in that gentle rhythm, we quietly step into tonight's journey together. You now stand within Mesopotamia, a name that means the land between rivers. To your east flows the Tigris, restless and swift in certain seasons. To your west moves the Euphrates, calmer and wider beneath the sunlight. Between them stretches the Fertile Crescent, a broad plain where dark soil gathers after each flood. The rivers shape everything here, almost like careful artists smoothing wet clay with patient fingers. Before sunrise fully arrives, farmers step quietly onto the damp earth carrying baskets and wooden tools beside the canals. You notice how carefully they measure the water levels each morning. Too little water leaves the soil dry, while sudden floods can erase entire fields overnight. Ancient farming, you begin to realize, involves far more careful calculation than many modern students expect during rushed midnight assignments. Along the quiet canals, narrow boats drift through dark water carrying grain, reeds, and sealed clay, jars beneath the moonlight. The boatmen speak softly while gentle ripples spread across the surface in slow circles. Beside one shore, a sleepy dog stretches near tangled fishing nets before falling asleep again immediately, contributing very little to the hard-working atmosphere surrounding the peaceful river settlements nearby. Beneath shaded awnings, scribes carefully press reed tools into soft clay tablets during the afternoon heat. Their wedge-shaped symbols become one of humanity's earliest writing systems, known today as cuneiform. Many surviving tablets record wonderfully ordinary matters, including sheep counts and beer rations. Thousands of years later, ancient complaints about supplies and accounting still sound strangely familiar to modern ears, listening carefully across history's distance. Across the fertile plains, Sumerian city-states rise slowly from the earth beside the rivers. Places like Ur and Uruk become important centers of worship, trade, and government administration throughout southern Mesopotamia. Their towering temples catch sunlight during the day and pale moonlight after sunset. From far away, these great structures resemble enormous staircases reaching carefully upward toward the silent stars above the darkened plains. As generations quietly pass, Akkadian influence spreads across Mesopotamia beneath ambitious rulers, seeking control of valuable river trade routes. Yet ordinary life remains remarkably steady for most families living beside the canals and fields. bakers still wake before sunrise while children continue chasing one another along muddy roads. Somewhere nearby, a stubborn goat refuses cooperation completely, preserving a tradition of chaos apparently shared by goats throughout all recorded history. Fields of barley stretch outward beneath warm sunlight, while trade routes weave across Mesopotamia like threads through woven cloth. Merchants carry copper, timber, spices, wool, and carved stone between distant settlements connected by the fertile plains. Campfires glow beside dusty roads after sunset as travelers exchange stories about weather, trade, and difficult journeys. Ancient merchants, much like modern travelers, probably complained regularly about terrible meals and exhausting road conditions. As the centuries move quietly forward, Babylon slowly rises beside the Euphrates River. At first, you see it as only another settlement resting among many cities scattered across the plains. Yet merchants, travelers, and officials arrive there more often each season. Temples grow taller above the streets while canals widen beneath the sun. Almost unnoticed, Babylon begins attracting attention from the wider ancient world. Even while cities expand, Mesopotamia remains deeply tied to nature's gentle rhythms. Evening winds cool the mud-brick walls after long days of heat beneath open skies. Oil lamps flicker softly behind woven curtains while water glides endlessly through carefully maintained canals. Above the rivers, the stars appear unusually bright and peaceful, as though the night sky itself quietly watches over the sleeping plains below. You slowly understand why people remain devoted to this land despite its difficulties. The rivers provide fertile soil, transportation, fresh water, and dependable harvests, surrounded by harsher deserts and dry grasslands. Mesopotamia feels almost like a protected garden hidden within a difficult world. Wealth gathers here gradually, through repeating seasons and careful labor, not through sudden miracles or dramatic moments of fortune and power. Yet the same rivers nourishing these settlements also leave the region open to outsiders. Boats travel inward from distant territories, while broad plains allow roads to cross easily without mountains or forests blocking movement. Mesopotamia's prosperity shines across the ancient world, like warm firelight glowing through darkness. And wherever wealth settles peacefully for long enough, attention and ambition usually begin following close behind it afterward. For now, however, the land still rests beneath calm evening skies beside the rivers. Farmers return home carrying tools while merchants tie animals beside roadside shelters before darkness fully arrives. Temple fires flicker gently as scribes finish carving final symbols into clay tablets. Beyond the horizon, distant caravans slowly approach Mesopotamia, bringing unfamiliar languages, strange goods, and quiet stories from lands waiting patiently beyond the plains. Morning arrives slowly across Babylon, spreading pale gold light over mud-brick walls that still hold the coolness of night. You walk through wide streets where merchants quietly prepare their stalls beneath hanging cloth shades. The city feels calm and carefully ordered, almost like a great machine turning gently beside the Euphrates River. Somewhere nearby, a baker argues passionately with a stubborn donkey that appears completely uninterested in improving the situation. As the sun climbs higher above Babylon, temple towers glow softly beneath torchlight still burning from the previous night. Thin smoke rises from incense burners while priests cross quiet courtyards wearing robes trimmed with colored thread. The air carries the scent of cedar oil, warm bread, and drying river mud. Every sound feels softened, as though the city itself wishes to protect the calm morning silence. You continue deeper into Babylon's busy marketplaces, where rows of goods stretch beneath woven canopies moving gently in the breeze. Traders arrange baskets of dates beside jars filled with spices from distant regions. Copper tools flash beneath the sunlight while carved ivory and polished stones fill nearby stalls. Even the goats wandering through the crowded streets somehow behave with remarkable dignity, which feels deeply unusual for goats almost everywhere. Babylon thrives because it stands at the center of movement. Caravans arrive from Anatolia carrying silver and timber from mountain forests. Boats travel along the Euphrates loaded with grain, reeds, and carefully sealed jars of oil. Messengers move between distant settlements carrying news, agreements, and tax records. You begin noticing how nearly every road seems connected to Babylon eventually, like threads quietly pulling toward the center of an enormous woven carpet. At the center of Babylon stands the king, guiding both city and countryside through organized authority. Yet he never rules completely alone. Priests oversee temple rituals while scribes manage records pressed carefully into clay tablets. Officials inspect canals, supervise grain storage, and calculate taxes with endless patience. Ancient bureaucracy, you realize, already possesses the remarkable ability to transform ordinary farming into astonishing amounts of paperwork for everyone involved. You pause beside a shaded courtyard where young scribes practice wedge-shaped symbols upon wet clay beneath the afternoon heat. Their teachers watch carefully while students repeat the same marks again and again. Writing here controls trade, harvests, labor, and property throughout the kingdom. Entire cities depend upon accurate records. Somewhere nearby, one exhausted student probably wishes mathematics had remained somebody else's philosophical problem forever instead. Beyond Babylon's walls, canals and irrigation ditches spread across the countryside, carrying river water into fertile fields of barley, wheat, and date palms. Farmers know precisely when to open gates or redirect channels toward thirsty crops. These waterways demand constant attention, yet they transform dry plains into productive farmland. The canals resemble veins carrying life itself quietly through the vast body of Mesopotamia each season. The waterways surrounding Babylon allow the city to support enormous populations compared to nearby regions. Granaries stay full after successful harvests while extra grain feeds craftsmen, priests, builders, and merchants throughout the settlements. Wealth gathers steadily beside the rivers over generations. Fertile land in the ancient world, you realize, is nearly as valuable as finding convenient parking beside a crowded modern airport. At evening, you walk beside Babylon's outer walls while warm wind crosses the open plains beyond the city. From a distance, Babylon appears strong beneath organized leadership and thick defenses. Yet the landscape reveals a quieter weakness. Mesopotamia lacks mountains or forests protecting its fertile land. The plains remain broad, accessible, and surprisingly exposed beneath the enormous sky stretching endlessly outward. The rivers themselves create hidden vulnerability beneath all their generosity. Babylon depends completely upon canals, levees, and irrigation systems functioning properly throughout the year. If canals fail, fields dry beneath the heat almost immediately. If floods arrive uncontrolled, settlements suffer damage overnight. Entire communities maintain waterways carefully because survival depends upon constant labor and attention beside the rivers every single season. Even during peaceful years, neighboring cities compete quietly over water access and important trade routes. Smaller disputes appear and disappear like passing storms across the plains. Agreements require constant negotiation between rulers, merchants, and farming communities throughout the region. Stability here feels delicate beneath the surface. A blocked canal many miles away might eventually affect food prices inside Babylon itself before long. For now, however, Babylon remains prosperous enough to maintain strong relationships with surrounding territories. Traders from Anatolia arrive carrying metals and timber unavailable within the southern plains. Contact with Elam encourages commerce and cultural exchange across generations. Nomadic tribes travel along desert edges, beside settled farmland. Throughout Mesopotamia, borders rarely feel permanent because movement itself shapes life beside the rivers continuously. At sunset, Babylon glows gently beneath hundreds of oil lamps shining beside homes, workshops, and temple courtyards. Music drifts faintly through the warm evening air while cooks prepare meals scented with herbs and roasted grain. The Euphrates reflects soft orange light beneath darkening skies. During these peaceful hours, the city feels calm and secure, like a giant quietly resting beside the river after long labor. You stop before a towering stone stele, carved with lines from the Code of Hammurabi, among history's earliest legal systems. The laws explain rules surrounding labor, trade, property, and punishment for ordinary citizens. Many concern irrigation canals and farming duties directly. Ancient societies, you realize, already understood that arguments about water management could become exhausting for absolutely everyone involved remarkably quickly. The laws reveal how deeply Mesopotamia depends upon cooperation and careful balance. Farmers must share irrigation responsibly, while officials supervise canals and harvest systems across the plains. Merchants rely upon stable roads and predictable taxation to continue trading safely between cities. Priests maintain rituals believed to protect harmony between rivers, people, and gods. Babylon's strength grows slowly through organization rather than sudden displays of overwhelming power alone. Beyond Babylon's peaceful markets and glowing temples, the wider world changes. Quietly beyond Mesopotamia's borders, populations grow across distant lands while new kingdoms rise beyond mountains and deserts. Travelers entering the city bring stories about organized armies and ambitious rulers elsewhere. Far away beneath torchlit halls, leaders already study Mesopotamia's fertile plains while imagining futures extending beyond their current borders. As another evening settles softly across Babylon, merchants count coins beneath hanging lamps while farmers finish their work beneath fading red skies. Temple fires dim one by one beside the Euphrates as darkness deepens across the plains. Yet beyond those calm horizons, beyond roads leading toward deserts and mountains, larger populations continue moving slowly across the ancient world toward Mesopotamia's fertile rivers once again. Beyond the calm plains of Mesopotamia, other landscapes stretch outward beneath colder skies and harsher winds. You leave the soft river valleys behind and travel slowly toward dry highlands where rain falls less generously upon the earth. The ground becomes rocky and uneven beneath your feet. Sparse grasses move across distant hillsides while thin clouds drift over silent mountains. Even the wind here sounds sharper, like pages turning inside an enormous forgotten library. Far to the north, rugged hills rise beside narrow valleys where winters arrive earlier and linger longer. Villages cling to steep slopes overlooking rivers that rush quickly through stone canyons. Life in these regions feels less predictable than beside the Euphrates. Harvests depend heavily upon weather and seasonal snowmelt. Somewhere along a mountain trail, a weary traveler complains dramatically about carrying supplies uphill, proving that ancient people dislike steep walks just as much as everyone else. You continue west toward Anatolia, where broad plateaus stretch beneath cool skies glowing, pale silver during early morning hours. Sheep move slowly across rolling grasslands while smoke rises from settlements hidden among rocky ridges nearby. These lands produce skilled metalworkers, strong horses, and ambitious kingdoms shaped by difficult terrain. Unlike Mesopotamia's open plains, the mountains here naturally shield communities from sudden intrusion and wandering armies. Far beyond the eastern deserts, the Iranian plateau spreads beneath enormous skies and cold evening air. The land rises gradually into broad uplands where small settlements gather beside springs and seasonal rivers. Generations adapt carefully to these demanding landscapes through patience and resilience. In many ways, the environment itself quietly teaches people how to endure hardship calmly, without complaint, across long and difficult passing seasons together. North of Mesopotamia, Assyria slowly grows beside the upper Tigris River. At first glance, its cities appear practical rather than luxurious, built for discipline more than comfort. Yet beneath that simplicity lies remarkable organization. Assyrian rulers understand the importance of roads, communication, and careful administration. Their territories connect through systems designed to move information rapidly across great distances. Ancient royal messengers travel with astonishing speed, probably making modern delivery services feel slightly nervous by comparison. Further west, the Hittites established strong kingdoms among Anatolia's rugged mountains and valleys. Their people become skilled metalworkers and experienced diplomats trading tin, silver, horses, and crafted goods across distant regions. The Hittites understand that controlling roads sometimes matters more than winning battles directly. Kingdoms with secure trade routes often grow wealthy quietly, while neighboring rivals exhaust themselves through endless conflict instead. Meanwhile, across the eastern plateaus, Persian tribes expand gradually through scattered valleys and open grasslands beneath cold skies. Their settlements remain modest during these earlier centuries, yet they maintain contact with multiple cultures and trade systems nearby. They observe surrounding empires carefully while learning how larger kingdoms organize authority. In quiet camps at night, future rulers hear stories about fertile lands beside Mesopotamia's endless rivers. As generations pass, populations increase across the lands surrounding Mesopotamia. Families need more farmland, while rulers seek access to water and trade routes connecting distant regions. Smaller kingdoms gradually press against one another like travelers gathering beside warmth during cold evenings. Many migrations begin not through cruelty alone, but through ordinary human needs involving food, safety, and survival beneath uncertain skies. You begin noticing how geography quietly shapes political movement across the ancient world. Mountains limit farmland while dry uplands demand constant adaptation from nearby communities. Nomadic groups follow seasonal grazing paths, and merchants search for safer roads between distant markets. Caravan by caravan, movement increases steadily between kingdoms. The landscape itself gently encourages expansion toward richer territories and dependable river valleys nearby. Many traveling groups do not initially consider themselves conquerors arriving from beyond the horizon. Some move as traders searching for stable markets, while others seek pasture, security, or stronger borders for vulnerable kingdoms. Certain migrations unfold peacefully across generations as communities blend with older populations already living beside fertile rivers. Others grow gradually through alliances and territorial pressure. Human movement, you realize, often resembles water finding slow pathways through stone after many passing seasons. At night, caravans gather beside fires, beneath enormous skies stretching across mountains and dry grasslands. Traders exchange stories about Babylon's crowded markets and the canals of ancient Sumerian lands. Assyrian officials discuss roads and regional security, while Hittite merchants negotiate over metal prices beside Eastern travelers carrying unfamiliar goods. Around these quiet fires, maps slowly form inside human imagination, long before armies ever begin marching toward distant, fertile territories together. The Assyrians understand the value of communication across expanding territories remarkably well. Their road systems connect distant administrative centers through carefully maintained routes, allowing royal messages to travel quickly between cities. Mounted couriers ride day and night carrying sealed instructions across enormous landscapes. Information itself becomes a form of power. These ancient networks resemble nervous systems transmitting decisions through the growing body of an empire beneath open skies. Despite increasing organization among neighboring kingdoms, daily life across these regions still feels deeply ordinary and human. Shepherds guide animals beneath cold morning skies while families gather beside evening fires after long days of labor. Children chase one another through dusty streets as elders discuss weather and harvest conditions nearby. Somewhere along A roadside market, a merchant almost certainly exaggerates the quality of his goods with remarkable confidence again. You gradually understand why Mesopotamia attracts growing attention from beyond its borders. The fertile river valleys provide something increasingly valuable across the surrounding world: stability. Water flows through managed canals while harvests remain more dependable than farming across dry plateaus or cold mountain regions. Trade. Routes connect distant civilizations together through the plains. Wealth naturally gathers wherever survival becomes easier and daily life feels less uncertain for communities. At the same time, Mesopotamia remains unusually open beneath broad skies and accessible terrain. Unlike mountain kingdoms protected by difficult landscapes, the river plains connect easily through valleys, deserts, and trade routes approaching from several directions. The same geography supporting commerce also invites outside interest from ambitious rulers elsewhere. Prosperity shines clearly across these fertile lands, and powerful kingdoms rarely ignore regions where wealth gathers so visibly together. As seasons continue passing quietly, neighboring kingdoms expand while roads stretch steadily toward the fertile south. Trade grows beside diplomacy, migration, and military planning carried through royal courts and caravan routes alike. Far away beside the Tigris and Euphrates, farmers still measure water levels before sunrise while scribes press symbols into clay. Yet beyond the distant mountains, larger empires increasingly turn their attention toward Mesopotamia's valuable rivers. You stand again upon Mesopotamia's broad plains, where roads stretch beneath pale morning skies like threads sewn across cloth. These routes connect distant regions with remarkable ease. Northwest lies Anatolia, with mountain kingdoms and metal trade. Eastern paths rise toward the Persian highlands while southern deserts lead toward Arabia. Western roads continue toward the Levant and the distant Mediterranean coast beyond. Caravans move constantly across these ancient highways carrying goods gathered from many distant lands. Timber from northern forests arrives beside copper tools, incense, wool fabrics, and carved stone. Merchants guide camels slowly through dusty landscapes while riverboats drift along the Euphrates transporting grain and oil toward distant settlements. Mesopotamia becomes more than a crossroads. It becomes the natural meeting place for countless roads. You begin noticing how geography quietly shapes civilizations across generations. The Tigris and Euphrates create a natural corridor through otherwise difficult terrain, providing dependable water and transportation across great distances. Travelers moving between larger regions often cross these fertile plains because the rivers simplify movement greatly. Even exhausted merchants likely feel relief whenever green fields appear beside canals. As trade expands across Mesopotamia, wealth gathers steadily within the growing river cities. Taxes collected from merchants, bridges, and riverboats create enormous revenue for local rulers. Irrigated farmland supports large populations while workshops produce pottery, textiles, and tools exchanged across distant regions. Mesopotamia's prosperity grows not from one advantage alone, but from countless connections flowing together like converging rivers. Babylon gradually rises at the center of this interconnected world beside the Euphrates River. The city becomes more than a powerful settlement surrounded by fertile plains. Travelers speak about its walls, temples, and crowded marketplaces with admiration spreading far beyond Mesopotamia itself. Long before arriving there, many people already imagine Babylon glowing beyond distant horizons like a dream built from torchlight and sun-baked brick. At sunset, Babylon appears especially beautiful beneath warm evening skies and drifting smoke. Temple towers rise above crowded streets while oil lamps flicker beside courtyards and marketplaces. The Euphrates reflects orange and golden light beneath gently moving water. Wealthy places throughout history often create this effect. They shine brightly enough that distant rulers eventually begin wondering who controls such extraordinary prosperity and influence. You walk through Babylon's monumental gates while guards observe travelers beneath painted walls glowing in fading daylight. The Ishtar Gate shines deep blue with glazed bricks decorated by lions, dragons, and powerful bulls shaped in raised relief. Visitors from distant lands likely stare upward in silence. Somewhere nearby, however, one exhausted camel probably remains, entirely focused upon finding food and a comfortable place to rest. Inside Babylon, knowledge flows almost as steadily as trade beside the rivers. Priests study stars from temple rooftops while scribes record taxes, harvests, and legal agreements onto clay tablets. Schools teach mathematics and writing to future officials managing increasingly complex systems. Babylon becomes not only a commercial center, but also a gathering place for information, tradition, and carefully preserved ideas. Yet the same geography supporting prosperity also creates hidden vulnerability beneath Mesopotamia's stability. No mountains or endless forests protect Babylon's fertile plains from movement across surrounding regions. Roads remain open in nearly every direction. Armies, merchants, migrants, and diplomats approach the land with relative ease. The plains naturally invite movement, whether newcomers arrive peacefully or carrying far greater ambitions beneath polite conversation. The rivers increase accessibility even further throughout Mesopotamia's fertile heartland. Boats transport goods, people, and supplies efficiently across long distances through connected waterways and canals. Settlements remain linked through transportation networks spreading across the plains beside the Euphrates and Tigris. Ancient rulers understand clearly that controlling rivers also means controlling agriculture, communication, and commerce together across enormous territories beneath their authority. You slowly realize that Mesopotamia occupies a rare position within the ancient world. The region remains wealthy yet exposed, prosperous yet difficult to isolate from surrounding pressures. Neighboring kingdoms observe these fertile plains with admiration and careful calculation. The harvests remain reliable while trade routes generate constant revenue. From nearly every direction, rulers imagine advantages gained through influence over such a remarkably valuable region. At night, foreign merchants gather inside Babylon's inns exchanging stories beneath hanging lanterns and drifting smoke. Some describe snowy mountain roads while others speak about rulers expanding across distant plateaus and grasslands. Through these conversations, Babylon absorbs information constantly from passing travelers. Even ordinary gossip here sometimes spreads farther than official announcements within neighboring kingdoms nearby. Meanwhile, Babylon's symbolic importance grows beside its material wealth and political influence. To neighboring powers, controlling the city means more than gaining farmland or collecting trade taxes. Babylon represents legitimacy, prestige, and connection to respected ancient traditions. Rulers hoping to command such a city often desire recognition as much as practical advantage. Human ambition, you notice, rarely separates glory completely from power itself. Priests understand Babylon's symbolic importance deeply within Mesopotamia. Ceremonies continue beneath towering temples, where incense rises beside quiet chanting and sacred offerings. Seasonal festivals fill torchlit streets after sunset. These rituals strengthen Babylon's role as both spiritual and political center across the fertile plains. Visiting envoys often observe these ceremonies while imagining similar traditions beneath their own rulers. Despite Babylon's growing importance, ordinary life remains surprisingly calm throughout these prosperous years. Bakers prepare bread before sunrise while fishermen cast nets into the Euphrates beneath soft morning mist. Children chase stray dogs through narrow alleyways lined with mud brick homes. Nearby, scribes debate calculations beside drying clay tablets. Somewhere nearby, a merchant promises impossible bargains with wonderfully timeless confidence again. Outside the city walls, caravans arrive more frequently beneath warm evening skies with every passing season. Their animals raise dust while guards inspect goods and collect taxes beside crowded gates. Foreign languages become increasingly common throughout Babylon's streets. Travelers bring unfamiliar clothing, trade agreements, and rumors about expanding kingdoms beyond distant mountains. Gradually, the outside world moves closer toward Mesopotamia yearly. Babylon's rulers notice these gradual changes, although stability still appears secure beneath the city's magnificent walls. Wealth flows steadily through crowded markets, while harvests remain strong beside the rivers. Religious ceremonies continue beneath towering temples. Yet the roads linking Mesopotamia to neighboring lands now carry more than trade. They also carry curiosity, attention, and growing ambition from distant kingdoms. As another peaceful evening settles across Babylon, the Ishtar Gate glows blue beneath flickering torchlight while the Euphrates moves quietly through darkness beyond the walls. Merchants rest after journeys across mountains and deserts while priests extinguish sacred fires beneath silent stars. Yet each year, more foreign envoys arrive carrying diplomatic gifts and increasingly serious interest in Mesopotamia's fertile rivers. The first signs of outside influence arrive so quietly that many people barely notice them at all. Near Babylon's gates before sunrise, unfamiliar caravans pass beneath fading stars carrying fabrics, metals, and gifts for royal courts. Diplomats ride beside merchants wearing embroidered robes from distant kingdoms. Nothing appears dangerous yet. The atmosphere feels calm, organized, and strangely ordinary beneath the cool morning light surrounding the city. Inside Babylon, visiting envoys move carefully through palace halls carrying sealed letters and measured smiles between guarded conversations. They speak about trade agreements, border security, and peaceful cooperation among neighboring powers seeking stability. Servants pour wine into decorated cups while translators repeat each sentence between languages. Ancient diplomacy, you realize, already contains the same exhausting amount of formal politeness found throughout modern meetings everywhere. Along Babylon's busy marketplaces, foreign merchants gradually establish permanent stalls beside local traders beneath woven canopies. New accents become common beside familiar Babylonian speech as travelers from Assyria, Anatolia, and eastern plateaus sell horses, wool, metal tools, and carved ornaments. At first, these changes feel exciting rather than threatening because prosperous trade naturally attracts outside influences everywhere. Soon afterward, military advisors begin appearing beside diplomats and merchants throughout Babylon's growing networks. They arrive not as conquerors, but as officials offering training, defensive agreements, and support during regional disputes. Small groups of foreign soldiers accompany them, camping politely outside the city walls beneath orderly tents. Their presence seems temporary and harmless, although their numbers quietly increase over time. Beyond Mesopotamia's major cities, quieter transformations unfold across settlements near trade routes and river crossings. Border towns gradually shift influence through treaties, alliances, and tribute agreements instead of dramatic battles. Local rulers sometimes accept protection from stronger kingdoms in exchange for loyalty or taxes. History often moves this way, through negotiations and paperwork rather than sudden moments of visible chaos. You travel along dusty roads connecting Babylon to distant provinces and notice subtle differences appearing between settlements. In some towns, foreign guards stand beside local officials at administrative gates. Elsewhere, scribes record taxes using unfamiliar seals pressed into wet clay. New symbols appear painted across storage buildings and military wagons. These changes arrive gradually, like fresh paint covering older walls beneath sunlight. At night, camps belonging to Allied forces stretch quietly across the plains beyond Babylon's outer walls. Cooking fires flicker beneath dark skies while soldiers share meals beside tethered horses. The atmosphere feels disciplined rather than hostile. Some repair equipment while others listen to musicians after sunset. Somewhere nearby, 1 exhausted. Recruit still struggles unsuccessfully to fold a blanket into perfect military shapes. Within Babylon, life continues following familiar rhythms despite growing foreign presence throughout the city. Bakers prepare bread before dawn, while farmers measure water beside irrigation canals. Temple ceremonies proceed beneath rising incense smoke as merchants argue cheerfully inside crowded markets. Yet beneath these routines, Babylon slowly becomes more connected to outside powers through trade, diplomacy, and carefully negotiated agreements. Assyria especially develops methods for controlling territories gradually across enormous distances. Rather than relying entirely upon destruction, Assyrian rulers often reorganize populations to strengthen political stability within allied or conquered regions. Entire communities are relocated to areas where labor and loyalty become easier to manage. Ancient empires frequently viewed population movement as another administrative tool beside taxes and roads. You begin hearing more foreign languages throughout Babylon's crowded streets as merchants and officials settle longer inside the city. Aramaic phrases mingle beside Akkadian speech while travelers from eastern territories introduce unfamiliar dialects into marketplaces and inns. Markets become louder and increasingly international. Children growing up during these years likely switch comfortably between several languages before finishing their morning errands. The visual appearance of Babylon also changes gradually beneath outside influence. Foreign clothing styles appear beside traditional garments woven from local wool. Decorative patterns from distant regions spread across pottery, jewelry, and carved furniture displayed throughout the markets. Even military equipment reflects wider regional connections. Cultural blending rarely announces itself dramatically. Instead, it settles quietly into ordinary life over many generations. Meanwhile, Babylon's rulers attempt maintaining careful balance between cooperation and independence beside stronger neighboring powers. Alliances provide security while creating new obligations toward ambitious kingdoms. Tribute agreements preserve peace temporarily, yet slowly weaken local authority. Diplomatic marriages connect royal families through political necessity. Governing Mesopotamia increasingly resembles standing within moving water, where stability requires constant adjustment against invisible currents. People living through these transitions rarely experience history as dramatic turning points. Most notice change through practical details involving taxes, trade, language, or military presence beside familiar roads. Merchants suddenly require new permits while farmers encounter foreign officials inspecting canals. Somewhere within Babylon, an elderly shopkeeper almost certainly insists everything felt simpler 20 years earlier, regardless of whether that memory remains accurate. Outside the major cities, military camps become permanent features beside strategic crossings and transport routes. Defensive walls are reinforced while supply depots appear across the plains. Yet warfare remains limited during these years. Influence spreads mostly through agreements, negotiations, and administrative pressure instead of constant battles. In several regions, Mesopotamia changes ownership gradually before official declarations acknowledge reality. You continue walking through Babylon beneath warm evening light while observing old traditions blending beside newer influences. Temple. Bells echo across neighborhoods where foreign merchants now live beside local craftsmen. Caravan animals crowd busy inns filled with travelers discussing distant politics. The city remains prosperous and active, yet increasingly connected to outside powers whose presence no longer feels temporary. At the palace courts, diplomats arrive, frequently carrying gifts, treaties, and carefully worded requests from neighboring rulers. Some seek alliances while others propose military cooperation or valuable trade privileges. Babylon's officials respond cautiously because every agreement creates both opportunity and dependence. Beneath polite ceremonies and shared banquets, regional power slowly shifts direction beneath continued appearances of peace. Even the rivers seem to reflect these gradual transformations across Mesopotamia. Boats traveling along the Euphrates now carry goods marked with foreign symbols beside Babylonian signs. Soldiers escort caravans through strategic territories where tensions remain unresolved. New toll stations appear beside transport routes shared between allied powers. Nothing changes suddenly. Instead, countless small adjustments slowly reshape the political landscape. And then, as another season drifts across the fertile plains, the balance finally begins tipping beyond quiet influence toward something more permanent. Foreign camps remain outside important cities longer than before, while alliances deepen into direct authority. The rivers continue flowing calmly beneath pale skies, yet Babylon's old order grows thinner yearly. Soon, power itself will formally change hands. Morning light spreads gently across Babylon, while a strange quiet settles over the city walls beside the Euphrates River. Merchants, laborers, and temple servants stand watching guards move calmly along the gates without panic. The air feels heavy with expectation rather than fear, while daily life continues in its usual steady rhythm. The roads leading toward Babylon carry more organized movement than ordinary trade caravans usually create. Messengers travel between camps outside the city, while officials gather in administrative courtyards filled with clay tablets and sealed records. Yet no alarms sound and no crowds flee. The city continues breathing slowly beneath pale skies as history unfolds quietly. In the year 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great of Persia approaches Babylon after years of expanding authority across neighboring territories. His growing empire already stretches through vast regions east of Mesopotamia, connecting peoples from mountains, plateaus, and fertile valleys beneath a single administration. By now, many within Babylon understand that political change approaches steadily like a river rising after distant rainfall. Even those unwilling to discuss it openly can already feel the current shifting beneath familiar ground. The city gates open not with destruction, but with careful acceptance shaped by diplomacy and practical necessity. Officials move through palace halls while foreign representatives prepare administrative transitions. Scribes record taxes, property, grain, and canal systems. Empires often inherit paperwork before loyalty. Somewhere, a clerk realizes the records will become long and painfully detailed. Inside Babylon, temple rituals continue unchanged beneath incense smoke as they have for generations. Priests light sacred fires before dawn, while offerings rest beside carved statues. The gods receive worship regardless of political shifts beyond the courtyards. This continuity provides stability, as preserving sacred rhythms matters as much as maintaining walls or military strength. In the marketplaces, daily life continues with little disruption. Merchants weigh grain under cloth canopies while fishermen unload catches near canals. Women carry water jars as children move through crowded streets, laughing and playing. Life does not pause for rulers. Families still need bread, water, shelter, and patience to endure another long, ordinary day. The transition itself unfolds gradually through formal ceremonies and revised loyalties rather than open collapse. Babylon's previous rulers fade quietly from authority, while Persian officials assume responsibility for administration and taxation. New oaths are spoken within palace chambers lined with decorated stone and painted brick. Messengers carry announcements through the provinces explaining updated governance. Yet many local systems remain untouched because successful empires usually preserve structures that already function efficiently beneath the surface of political change. Cyrus enters Babylon with careful attention to stability and legitimacy. Historical records describe him presenting himself not as a destroyer, but as a ruler, restoring balance and respecting local traditions. The Cyrus cylinder records support for temples and religious customs. Even ancient propaganda here appears, unusually refined yet still functions as effective imperial administration. Outside palace districts, daily life continues without interruption. Farmers bring carts of barley and dates into the city, harvested from irrigated fields. The Euphrates flows steadily while boats move through canals under afternoon sunlight. Workers repair walls and maintain water systems as before. The land remains indifferent to changing rulers, responding only to natural rhythms and practical needs. The Persian administration quickly recognizes Mesopotamia's agricultural importance. Irrigation canals require constant maintenance, while granaries must remain carefully organized. Taxes from trade routes support a wider imperial network stretching beyond Babylon. Instead of dismantling local systems, officials integrate them into existing structures. Empires endure longer when they adapt foundations rather than rebuild everything from the beginning. At night, Babylon glows beneath oil lamps reflecting on river water. Temple towers rise unchanged into the sky while families share meals and travelers rest in inns discussing new governance. Some citizens feel uncertain, others relieved by the lack of destruction. Nearby, merchants already speculate whether Persian rule might improve caravan roads and trade reliability across regions. Gradually, Persian officials replace key administrative roles across the city and provinces. Tax collectors now serve under authority linked to Cyrus rather than Babylonian kings. Soldiers oversee gates and river crossings. Yet many scribes remain because knowledge of canals, harvests, and trade systems cannot be replaced quickly. Empires depend heavily on continuity, even after political authority changes hands. You notice how language itself begins shifting within official spaces during these years. Persian influence expands through administrative communication linking, distant territories under centralized rule. Yet Babylonian traditions remain firmly rooted in temples, markets, and households. Cultural change moves slowly compared to political authority, because everyday habits outlast banners and royal seals, carrying familiar life forward while new systems gradually take hold around them. Babylon's great walls still stand beneath. Warm desert winds as caravans arrive from regions now connected under Persian control. Trade often increases along major routes because wider stability reduces conflict between territories. Merchants move goods across longer distances with greater confidence than before. Some communities accept new rulers pragmatically, valuing stable roads, predictable taxes, and peaceful markets as essential parts of daily survival in the ancient world. Still, something irreversible has already occurred beneath this outward continuity. Mesopotamia no longer stands primarily under Babylonian kings, whose dynasties once shaped the region for generations. Power now extends eastward toward Persian courts and administrative networks far beyond the rivers. Babylon remains wealthy and respected, but it becomes part of a larger imperial system, whose influence stretches across mountains, deserts, and distant settlements under unified authority. People experience this transition unevenly, depending on their role in society. Priests focus on preserving rituals, merchants explore new opportunities, farmers continue watching river levels, and scribes adjust official records to new standards. Soldiers swear loyalty beneath unfamiliar banners. Most individuals do not see themselves as part of a major turning point. They simply continue daily responsibilities while political structures shift quietly above them. Over time, the memory of formal change fades into routine administration. Persian governors establish authority while local officials adapt to new hierarchies. Foreign seals appear beside older symbols on documents stored in palace archives. Advisors from distant regions become familiar in government courtyards. The city's rhythms gradually absorb these changes, blending older traditions with new influences until the transition feels almost natural across everyday life. Beneath Persia's expanding empire, Babylon continues beside the Euphrates under moonlight and desert winds. Markets remain crowded, canals still shimmer in the morning sun, and temple fires burn through the night as before. Yet the city now belongs to a larger imperial story unfolding across vast regions. Under these new banners, the people of Mesopotamia slowly learn to live within a different age entirely. The first months beneath Persian rule pass quietly across Mesopotamia, though beneath the calm surface many people carry private uncertainty. You walk through Babylon's markets during the cool hours after sunrise and notice conversations lowering whenever politics enters discussion. Merchants exchange careful glances while officials inspect records beneath shaded courtyards. Nobody knows exactly how much life will change. Even the stray cats wandering near grain warehouses seem unusually thoughtful, which feels mildly suspicious for cats. At first, rumors move faster than official announcements. Some people fear heavier taxes while others expect foreign soldiers to replace local customs entirely. Travelers arriving from distant provinces bring conflicting stories about Persian governors, military policies, and royal decrees. One merchant insists conditions will improve dramatically, while another predicts endless administrative confusion. Ancient rumor networks, you realize, already function with the same remarkable confidence and questionable accuracy later perfected by neighborhood gossip everywhere throughout history. Yet, day after day, the city continues functioning with surprising steadiness beneath its new rulers. Bakers still rise long before dawn to prepare bread ovens glowing softly against the darkness. Farmers continue measuring river levels beside irrigation gates before the heat becomes unbearable. Fishermen guide boats through narrow canals carrying nets and baskets exactly as their fathers once did. Human routines possess extraordinary endurance, even while governments quietly rearrange themselves overhead like shifting clouds. Gradually, Persian administration begins introducing small adjustments throughout Babylon and surrounding territories. Tax records are rewritten using updated seals and standardized procedures connected to the wider empire. Certain payments now travel farther east toward imperial centers beyond Mesopotamia itself. Officials explain these changes carefully through translators and scribes working inside crowded administrative buildings. Somewhere nearby, one exhausted accountant almost certainly develops a deep personal hatred for duplicate paperwork and inconsistent grain measurements. Language also begins shifting slowly within government offices and trade centers across the region. Aramaic spreads steadily as a common administrative language throughout much of the Near East under Persian rule. Merchants, officials, and messengers increasingly rely upon it for communication between distant provinces connected by imperial roads. You hear unfamiliar phrases mixing with older Babylonian dialects throughout markets and palace courtyards alike. Children growing up now probably switch languages faster than adults can finish simple instructions. For ordinary citizens, however, these transformations arrive gradually rather than suddenly. A farmer in the countryside still worries primarily about canal maintenance, seasonal floods, and barley harvests. A potter remains focused upon shaping clay before the afternoon heat dries it too quickly. Families continue gathering for evening meals beneath oil lamps while listening to the wind move softly through palm trees outside their homes. Political transitions rarely erase the persistent demands of daily survival. Some citizens adapt more easily to the changing order. Merchants welcome stability across Persian trade routes, which allows safer and more profitable long-distance commerce. Scribes fluent in multiple languages gain new roles within administration. Temple priests negotiate carefully with officials while preserving rituals. Adaptation becomes practical learning rather than absolute loyalty to shifting political authority. Yet, a quiet fatigue settles across parts of society. Mesopotamia has endured generations of shifting rulers and alliances before Persian control. Many no longer resist dramatically because political change feels temporary. Older citizens accept history as repetition. Rivers continue flowing regardless of empires collecting taxes, reinforcing a calm resignation beneath changing governance. In Babylon, lantern light flickers across mud brick walls and narrow streets. Foreign officials now stand beside local administrators in public spaces. Persian soldiers patrol near gates while translators assist merchants from distant provinces. Despite these changes, the city remains recognizably Babylonian. Temple chants echo at night while bread ovens warm streets before dawn returns. Outside the capital, rural life varies by location. Settlements near trade routes experience heavier oversight through taxes and transport systems. Smaller villages remain mostly unchanged except for new obligations. In many places, imperial presence feels distant, appearing only through officials or messengers. For most farmers, empire remains something heard about rather than constantly seen. Persian rulers prioritize stability over disruption. Existing canal systems, agricultural networks, and local customs are preserved when effective. Governors focus on taxes, trade, and loyalty rather than micromanaging daily life. This practical strategy helps control vast territories with fewer rebellions. Ancient administration, like modern systems, often depends on efficiency over constant interference. Roads across Mesopotamia grow increasingly active under Persian organization. Royal messengers move quickly between provinces using relay stations. Merchants travel farther with improved security. News from Egypt, Anatolia, and eastern lands reaches Babylon more frequently. Gradually, the ancient world becomes tightly connected through imperial networks spanning enormous distances and diverse cultures. At temple schools and administrative centers, younger generations adapt quickly to the new order. Students learn additional languages alongside traditional writing systems. Scribes study revised legal formulas and taxation rules under Persian governance. Children imitate foreign accents from passing merchants. Cultural blending happens quietly, through habit, repetition, and everyday curiosity rather than formal declarations of change. Yet many people still sense that authority now rests beyond Mesopotamia's rivers. Decisions affecting local life come from distant imperial centers linked by long roads. Babylon remains wealthy and respected, but no longer stands at the center of political power. This realization settles slowly into public awareness like dust, drifting across abandoned stone pathways. Despite these changes, the emotional atmosphere gradually becomes calmer. Early fears fade as widespread destruction never arrives under Persian rule. Trade continues without interruption. Harvests remain steady along the rivers. Religious practices persist unchanged. Families discover that ordinary life can continue under new rulers just as it did under older dynasties across generations of shifting authority. During quiet evenings beside the Euphrates, boats move slowly through dark canals reflecting distant lantern light. Conversations drift across the water while music rises faintly from beyond marketplace walls. Persian governance shapes political structure, yet Mesopotamia's deeper rhythms continue through farming, trade, and memory. The land absorbs change, gradually without losing its older identity. Time softens the sharpness of transition as foreign officials become familiar figures in daily life. New taxes settle into routine expectation. Aramaic spreads through commerce and administration until linguistic change feels natural. Even political loyalty shifts quietly through repetition. People measure life less by conquest and more by rivers, harvests, and market rhythms. Beneath Persian banners above Babylon's walls, Mesopotamia enters a long period of stability. Canals nourish fields under intense sunlight while merchants travel with caravans across open plains. Temple fires glow after sunset as messengers move along imperial roads. Gradually, through everyday routines, the empire establishes itself across the rivers and surrounding lands. As the years pass beneath Persian rule, Mesopotamia settles into a quieter rhythm shaped by administration rather than conquest. You travel slowly along the roads outside Babylon, and notice fewer signs of uncertainty than before. Markets operate with steady confidence while caravans move between cities beneath guarded routes. Officials now perform their duties with practiced routine. The empire feels less like a sudden arrival and more like a vast structure gradually settling its weight across the land. The Persian rulers divide their enormous territories into administrative provinces governed by officials responsible for taxes, security, and communication. These provinces, often called satrapies, stretch across mountains, deserts, fertile plains, and distant coastlines. Each governor oversees local administration while remaining loyal to the king far away. The system resembles an enormous woven net spread carefully across many cultures. Somewhere inside this bureaucracy, one unfortunate clerk probably spends entire afternoons searching for misplaced camel inventory reports. In Mesopotamia, local administrators continue working beside Persian governors because knowledge of canals, harvest schedules, and river systems remains essential for maintaining stability. Scribes record taxes onto clay tablets while inspectors travel between farming districts measuring grain production and irrigation repairs. The empire depends heavily upon organized record-keeping. Every harvest, toll payment, and shipment contributes quietly to the machinery supporting imperial authority across thousands of miles of connected territory. You pass through small administrative stations built beside important roads where officials collect taxes from merchants transporting goods between provinces. Caravans stop briefly beneath shaded courtyards while scribes calculate payments using careful measurements and sealed records. The process appears surprisingly calm despite its complexity. Ancient taxation, much like modern paperwork, seems capable of exhausting everyone involved equally regardless of language, nationality, or social position across the empire. The roads themselves become among Persia's greatest achievements. Royal highways stretch across astonishing distances linking Babylon to distant capitals, military centers, and trade routes throughout the Near East. Relay stations positioned along these roads allow royal messengers to travel rapidly between provinces carrying official information sealed beneath imperial authority. Communication moves faster now than many earlier kingdoms believed possible. For ancient rulers, quick information often proves nearly as valuable as armies or fertile farmland. You watch mounted couriers arrive at one roadside station during the fading light of afternoon. Their horses breathe heavily while attendants prepare fresh animals and water before the riders continue onward without lengthy rest. Messages pass from hand to hand with remarkable efficiency beneath the vast desert sky. The Persian Royal Road eventually becomes famous throughout the ancient world because information can travel across enormous distances with unexpected speed and reliability. Along expanding networks, trade flourishes with greater consistency than before. Merchants carrying grain, textiles, spices, and metals travel confidently under imperial protection. Banditry declines along major routes because secure commerce benefits taxation and governance. Stability becomes profitable. Peaceful roads encourage movement, and movement gradually enriches cities, villages, and governments through repeated everyday exchange. At Babylon's granaries, workers organize vast stores of barley and wheat from irrigated fields. Laborers carry baskets through shaded halls while officials inspect supply records. These granaries support local populations and imperial systems across provinces. The abundance feels carefully managed, almost orderly. Even pigeons above rooftops seem to know where grain is consistently stored. The empire standardizes legal and administrative systems across its territories. Local customs remain, but taxation, communication, and governance become more consistent. Merchants traveling between regions face fewer sudden changes in rules or tolls. Empires endure not only through force, but by creating predictable order that allows distant regions to function together over time. Outside cities, caravans move slowly beneath warm sunlight across Mesopotamian plains. Camels carry wool, silver, incense, and pottery under woven coverings. Drivers guide animals while guards walk beside the caravan, raising dust into golden air. The journey feels calm and steady. Ancient trade often unfolds patiently, except when stubborn camels refuse to continue forward. At roadside stations, travelers share evening meals beneath hanging lamps while exchanging news from distant regions. Some speak of Anatolia, others of Egypt or Eastern Persia. Imperial roads connect goods, officials, stories, and ideas across cultures once separated by distance. Mesopotamia remains central to this network, absorbing influences from many surrounding directions. At night, royal couriers move beneath star-filled skies while temple fires burn quietly along river banks. Inside government halls, administrative records accumulate on clay tablets and in sealed baskets. The empire operates through constant communication and oversight across vast distances. Most citizens never travel far, yet these systems create stability, offering dependable order after generations shaped by uncertainty, shifting rulers, and recurring change. Farmers along the Euphrates benefit from a calmer environment. Canal systems receive steadier oversight while trade expands for agricultural goods moving between provinces. Seasonal rhythms remain unchanged despite large political structures. Men guide water into fields before sunrise, while women grind grain in courtyards. Agriculture continues following rivers, weather, and repetition above imperial systems. In Babylon, foreign merchants gather in organized marketplaces under imperial protection. Goods from distant regions appear beside local crafts and food. Aramaic spreads as a shared language across trade networks. Conversations blend multiple cultures naturally around stalls. People adapt quickly when commerce provides practical motivation, turning diversity into everyday economic exchange and cooperation. The Persian administration balances central authority with local traditions. Temples continue functioning, and priests maintain rituals preserved across generations. Household customs remain intact despite imperial integration. This balance helps maintain social stability across diverse populations. Governing vast territories requires patience and restraint, though history shows rulers often struggle to maintain consistent moderation over time. Signs of imperial control appear across the landscape. Official seals mark storage facilities near river ports. Tax stations monitor crossings along major trade routes. Governors oversee strategic cities through correspondence and military oversight. Even remote villages occasionally receive visiting officials with sealed instructions. The empire spreads through administration, connecting daily life with distant centers of authority. As evening returns, Mesopotamia's roads remain active with merchants, soldiers, and travelers. Rivers reflect lantern light beside crowded docks, while grain stores remain full after harvests. Stability defines the region more than uncertainty. Yet beneath this order, the land absorbs each layer of influence left by successive rulers, shaping its long historical continuity. Over time, these influences settle into cities, languages, and architecture. Roads reshape trade and administration, changes relationships between communities. Foreign customs blend with older traditions rooted along the rivers. Persia appears strong under the evening sky, yet like earlier empires, it leaves lasting marks on Mesopotamia, where history continues, flowing beneath the rivers. Time moves gently across Mesopotamia beneath Persian rule, and the land slowly absorbs each generation of change like riverbanks absorbing seasonal floods. You travel along old roads where border markers once separated smaller kingdoms now folded into larger imperial territories. Many of those earlier boundaries fade quietly from memory. Farmers plow fields where rival armies once marched, while caravans cross former frontiers without even noticing where one authority once ended and another began centuries earlier. The maps of Mesopotamia never remain still for very long. Borders shift gradually beneath new rulers, alliances, and administrative reforms carried across the plains by distant governments. One province expands, while another disappears into larger systems designed for easier taxation and control. Yet, the rivers themselves continue flowing through all these rearrangements with calm indifference. Geography often outlives politics, although politics certainly enjoys pretending otherwise whenever new officials begin drawing impressive lines across old landscapes. Trade expands steadily throughout the empire, connecting Mesopotamia to regions farther away than many earlier generations could easily imagine. Ships move along the Persian Gulf carrying goods toward distant markets while caravans cross mountains and deserts through protected trade routes. Babylon remains an important center within these networks, though now part of something much larger. Somewhere inside a crowded market, one merchant undoubtedly claims his imported pottery will absolutely change everyone's life forever. The economic rhythms of the region also begin adapting to imperial needs rather than purely local demands. Farmers grow crops not only for nearby cities, but for wider systems supporting armies, administrators, and trade centers across multiple provinces. Taxation becomes more organized and predictable beneath Persian administration, though not necessarily lighter for ordinary citizens carrying grain baskets beneath the summer heat. Ancient taxpayers, much like modern ones, probably develop remarkably creative ways to complain about government obligations. Along the roads outside Babylon, you notice larger storage facilities and expanded transport systems supporting long-distance commerce. Grain, wool, oil, and crafted goods move steadily between provinces through carefully managed networks. Royal oversight ensures roads remain usable and toll stations operate efficiently. Stability encourages growth, and growth slowly reshapes the economy of Mesopotamia into something increasingly tied to imperial priorities rather than isolated city-states competing beside the rivers. The cities themselves begin reflecting layers of cultural blending accumulated across generations of foreign influence. Persian architectural styles appear beside older Babylonian structures built from sun-baked brick and glazed tile. Decorative patterns from distant regions spread through marketplaces, palaces, and religious spaces. New clothing styles become fashionable among merchants and officials connected to imperial administration. Civilization rarely replaces itself completely. Instead, cultures settle gradually upon one another like layers of dust carried by desert winds. Language changes quietly as well. Aramaic continues spreading across administrative systems and trade networks because it allows communication between diverse populations scattered across enormous territories. Yet Akkadian and older local traditions survive within temples, families, and scholarly records preserved carefully by scribes. You hear conversations shifting between languages naturally throughout crowded markets. Human beings adapt their speech surprisingly fast whenever trade, government, or practical necessity quietly rewards flexibility over stubbornness. Religious traditions also evolve through contact between cultures living beneath shared imperial systems. Persian rulers generally allow local worship practices to continue throughout Mesopotamia, and Babylon's temples remain active beneath the towering ziggurats beside the Euphrates. Yet ideas move alongside merchants and officials traveling. The great roads. Gods from distant lands become familiar names within foreign quarters of the cities. Spiritual life expands slowly through exchange, rather than sudden replacement during these quieter centuries. Inside Babylon's temple schools and libraries, scribes continue preserving astonishing amounts of knowledge upon clay tablets stacked carefully inside storage rooms. Mathematical records, legal agreements, religious hymns, astronomical observations, and agricultural accounts survive because generations of administrators obsessively record nearly everything imaginable. Somewhere among these tablets, You suspect there must also exist several very passive-aggressive complaints regarding grain deliveries and poorly behaved livestock from long-forgotten provincial officials. Babylon's scholars become renowned for their careful study of the night sky. From temple rooftops, astronomers track planets, eclipses, and lunar cycles with patient precision, recording patterns across generations. Their clay tablets preserve surprisingly accurate calculations. These records later astonish historians for how closely they approach modern understandings of celestial motion. You climb a temple platform after sunset as cool air flows over the city. Priests and scholars observe the stars beside flickering oil lamps against clay walls. Astronomy blends with religion, agriculture, and royal authority. In Mesopotamia, the heavens are never merely decoration, but part of life's rhythms beneath the rivers. The preservation of knowledge becomes one of empire's quiet contradictions. Conquerors erase political independence while protecting records, architecture, and traditions through larger systems. Persian rule preserves Babylon as an administrative center. Clay tablets survive because literacy and bureaucracy remain essential. Empires often preserve fragments of earlier civilizations simply because they still serve practical needs. Yet older worlds still fade gradually despite preservation. Languages disappear across generations. Local rulers vanish from memory, while temples decay under heat, wind, and neglect. Entire settlements are abandoned when trade routes shift. The land remembers selectively. Some histories survive in monuments and archives, while ordinary lives dissolve quietly into dust without written record. Every empire leaves behind layers rather than complete replacements. Babylon itself rests on Sumerian foundations, carries Akkadian influence, and later Persian administration. Streets are renamed over time, gods take on new titles, and city walls are rebuilt using stones taken from older, forgotten structures. Civilization feels like an endless conversation where each generation interrupts the previous one while unknowingly repeating familiar ideas in different forms. Outside cities, agriculture continues sustaining imperial power through endless cycles of planting and harvest. Canals carry water across fertile fields while workers repair irrigation systems damaged by floods. Farmers focus on rivers, not politics. Yet their labor feeds populations across vast territories. Ordinary life, quietly, supports ambitions of rulers who rarely see these landscapes directly. Over time, empires depend increasingly on the systems they control. Roads require constant maintenance. Governors demand supervision. Tax records expand endlessly. Stability becomes increasingly heavy to maintain. The larger an empire grows, the more effort is needed just to preserve existing order. Success itself begins to generate administrative burden beneath apparent strength. Beneath the stars, studied by Babylonian astronomers, the Persian Empire continues across its vast territories. Roads remain active, granaries stay full, and temple fires glow beside the Euphrates. Yet beneath stability, exhaustion gathers within imperial machinery. Like riverbanks slowly shaped by water, even strong empires begin feeling the steady pressure of time. The Persian Empire remains vast and impressive across Mesopotamia. Yet small signs of strain begin appearing beneath its calm surface like cracks, forming slowly in dry earth after long heat. You travel beside the Euphrates and notice tax collectors, becoming more persistent in villages already burdened by difficult harvests. Officials demand careful accounting from merchants and farmers alike. Somewhere along the road, one exhausted trader mutters that paperwork now travels faster than actual goods across the empire. In Babylon, administrative buildings grow increasingly crowded with scribes managing endless records tied to taxation, transportation, and provincial oversight. Clay tablets pile higher upon storage shelves while royal correspondence multiplies across distant territories requiring constant supervision. The empire still functions effectively, but its machinery becomes heavier and more complicated each passing decade. Maintaining enormous systems across mountains, deserts, and river valleys demands energy that even strong governments struggle to sustain forever. Beyond the cities, smaller revolts occasionally disturb the peaceful rhythm of imperial order. Some provincial leaders resist taxation, while others challenge governors appointed from distant courts unfamiliar with local traditions. Most uprisings remain limited rather than catastrophic, fading after negotiations or military response restores control. Yet these disturbances reveal growing tension beneath the appearance of stability. Even ordinary farmers begin hearing more rumors about unrest carried along the trade routes beside the rivers. The roads that once symbolized Persian organization now carry heavier military movement between troubled regions. Soldiers march beside caravans while supply wagons travel through stations originally designed mainly for commerce and communication. Trade still flows steadily across the empire, but the atmosphere changes subtly. You sense more caution among travelers resting beside roadside fires at night. Ancient roads, much like human conversations, can gradually shift from friendly exchange toward uneasy tension without anyone clearly noticing the exact moment. At the same time, new powers rise beyond Mesopotamia's familiar horizons. In the distant west, Macedonian armies under Alexander the Great begin moving eastward with astonishing speed beneath ambitious leadership and disciplined organization. Stories about his victories spread gradually across the Near East through merchants, diplomats, and frightened officials carrying reports between provincial capitals. Some listeners dismiss these tales as exaggerated rumors. Others quietly recognize the familiar pattern of another expanding empire approaching the fertile plains. You stand beside Babylon's busy markets while travelers discuss battles occurring far beyond the city walls. Many citizens continue focusing upon ordinary concerns involving harvests, taxes, and river conditions rather than distant military campaigns. Yet uncertainty slowly returns to conversations that once centered mainly upon stable trade and predictable administration. History rarely announces itself loudly at first. Often it arrives disguised as distant rumors repeated cautiously beside evening fires and crowded inns. When Alexander eventually enters Babylon in 331 BCE after defeating Persian forces, the city experiences another transfer of power layered upon all those before it. Once again, the gates open. Once again, officials reorganize records and swear new loyalties beneath changing banners. Yet the transition feels strangely familiar by now, as though Mesopotamia itself has learned to absorb conquerors the way riverbanks absorb seasonal floods returning again and again across centuries. Alexander admires Babylon deeply after arriving. Within the ancient city, historical accounts suggest he intends to transform it into one of the great capitals of his expanding empire. The city's position beside the rivers still offers enormous strategic and symbolic importance connecting east and west together. Roads, canals, trade routes, and fertile farmland continue making Mesopotamia irresistible to ambitious rulers. Geography, you realize, remains remarkably stubborn regardless of how many empires attempt controlling it. Yet Alexander's time in Babylon proves unexpectedly brief. In 383 BCE, he dies there before completing many of his larger plans for the city and empire beyond. The sudden loss creates uncertainty across territories already stretched enormous distances beneath fragile administrative systems. Once again, power fragments into competing authorities struggling over succession, control, and legitimacy. Somewhere nearby, a weary scribe probably sighs deeply while preparing entirely new official documents for yet another ruling dynasty. After Alexander's death, Mesopotamia becomes contested ground among successor kingdoms competing across former Macedonian territories. Greek culture spreads through parts of the region, while Babylonian and Persian traditions continue beside it. Cities gain new styles, languages, and political structures layered over older foundations. civilization here never resets. It only accumulates layers through repeated conquest and adaptation. Later, the Parthians rise from eastern territories, expanding across Persia and Mesopotamia to challenge weakened successors of Alexander. Mobile cavalry and alliances reshape. Control once again. Roads carry armies and merchants alike, while river crossings regain strategic importance. Though rulers change constantly, the deeper patterns of Mesopotamia's history remain strangely familiar across time. The fertile plains of Mesopotamia continue attracting outside interest because their value never fades. Grain grows abundantly. Along irrigation canals and trade routes link distant regions through river valleys. Cities generate wealth and influence for whoever controls them. Geography repeatedly shapes ambition, turning the region into a steady light that surrounding powers inevitably turn toward across centuries. At sunset, you walk beside abandoned roads where stones from forgotten kingdoms lie half-buried in dust. New military columns pass toward contested borders while merchants wait for safer conditions. The same routes once used for trade now guide armies. Roads themselves remain neutral. People decide whether they serve commerce, migration, diplomacy, or war in each generation. Babylon itself shows signs of slow exhaustion after centuries of imperial transitions. Some canals require constant repair, and older districts grow quieter as trade shifts elsewhere. Yet the city still holds symbolic power across civilizations. Travelers continue speaking of Babylon long after its political strength fades. Some places survive not through rule, but through memory and meaning. Ordinary people adapt again to changing authority. Farmers follow seasonal waters regardless of rulers beyond the horizon. Bakers rise before dawn, and fishermen move through misted canals. Life continues through repetition more than prediction. Most learn that survival depends less on politics and more on enduring whatever changes arrive. Across centuries, Mesopotamia follows a repeating pattern. Empires rise through organization, trade, and force, expanding along rivers that sustain them. Eventually, they weaken under complexity, succession struggles, and external pressure. Yet the rivers remain constant, carrying life through every shift of power, quietly outlasting every system built upon their banks. The Tigris and Euphrates continue flowing beneath moonlit skies and desert winds. Roads remain open toward distant lands where new powers emerge. Mesopotamia changes rulers again and again, but its deeper nature stays the same. The land between the rivers keeps drawing ambition toward it, while time moves forward slowly, steadily, and without ever stopping. Night settles softly once more across Mesopotamia, and the rivers move beneath the moon exactly as they did thousands of years before. You stand quietly beside the dark waters while silver reflections drift across the canals between clusters of reeds and sleeping palm trees. The air feels cooler now after the long heat of day. Somewhere far away, a dog barks briefly into the silence before even that small sound fades gently back into the night. The Tigris and Euphrates continue their patient journey through the fertile plains, winding past forgotten walls and abandoned canals buried slowly beneath drifting earth. Water slips through the darkness with the same calm rhythm heard by countless generations before you. It carried Sumerian boats, Assyrian messengers, Babylonian merchants, Persian officials, and Greek soldiers alike. Rivers, you realize, never pause long enough to care who currently claims ownership of the land beside them. Long ago, the Sumerians built some of the earliest cities near these waters. They shaped clay into tablets and pressed wedge-shaped writing into the soft surface before leaving the tablets to dry beneath the sun. They measured harvests, counted sheep, and recorded beer rations with extraordinary dedication. Even today, historians still uncover these ordinary records buried beneath the sand. Humanity's first written legacy, rather wonderfully, includes a surprising amount of accounting paperwork. After them came Akkadian kings and rising Assyrian rulers from the north, bringing organized armies, road systems, and expanding imperial ambition across the plains. Their banners disappeared centuries ago, yet traces remain scattered beneath the soil. Broken walls rest beneath quiet hills. Ancient roads survive beneath modern pathways. In Mesopotamia, history rarely vanishes completely. It simply sinks layer by layer beneath newer civilizations, waiting patiently for future generations to uncover fragments once again. Babylon rose beside the Euphrates like a glowing dream built from mud brick, trade, and ceremony. Its temples reached toward the heavens while merchants crowded the markets beneath the Ishtar Gate's blue tiles and carved lions. Scholars observed the stars from high platforms above the sleeping city. Travelers crossed deserts just to witness its wealth and grandeur. Yet even Babylon eventually faded beneath time, proving that legendary cities remain mortal despite how eternal they may first appear. Then Persia stretched outward across mountains, deserts, and fertile valleys, gathering Mesopotamia into an empire connected by royal roads and administrative order. Messengers traveled astonishing distances carrying sealed commands beneath the king's authority. Trade flourished. Languages blended together across crowded markets and caravan routes. Yet Persia, too, became another layer added to the endless history of the rivers. No empire, however organized, ever completely escapes the slow gravity of passing centuries. Greek influence arrived after Alexander entered Babylon under Macedonian banners. For a brief moment, the city again stood at the center of vast imperial ambition linking east and west. Alexander reportedly planned to make Babylon a great capital before his sudden death in 323 BCE, leaving behind unfinished plans like forgotten luggage scattered through history. Listening to water beside reeds, centuries begin to feel less separate. Sumerians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and many others passed through these plains under the same stars. Their languages and rulers changed, but all eventually became memory. Meanwhile, the rivers continued flowing steadily southward, carrying time forward without ever stopping. The cycle of Mesopotamian history begins to resemble nature more than politics. Power rises through trade, geography, and organization. Cities grow beside fertile land and rivers. Outside kingdoms notice wealth and send armies. Over time, distance and complexity weaken empires until new powers appear. History moves like the rivers, repeating familiar paths endlessly. You walk beside an old canal where shallow water still moves through bending reeds. This channel once supported farms and thousands of lives under Babylonian rule. Now, silence surrounds crumbling banks beneath night skies. Silt fills abandoned waterways while forgotten cities slowly sink into earth, covered by drifting sand and patient moonlight. Many Mesopotamian cities vanished for centuries before being rediscovered beneath desert soil. Temples, libraries, and neighborhoods lay hidden while winds moved endlessly across empty plains. Travelers once passed nearby without knowing entire civilizations rested below their path. It feels strangely calm, as if human efforts toward permanence are always quietly reshaped by time into buried memory. Yet some things remain unchanged. The stars studied by Babylonian astronomers still shine above the rivers. Orion rises in winter skies. The moon reflects on dark water flowing past reeds. Night wind carries earth and river scents through palms. Nature preserves its rhythms long after palaces fall and royal names fade away. Far across the plains, small fires glow in scattered camps and villages beneath vast open skies. People eat, talk, and rest after long days beside the rivers. Someone quietly complains about tomorrow's work while another drifts asleep mid-story. Everything feels timeless here, repeating ordinary human rhythms beside waterways that outlast every empire ever claiming control of them. Canals whisper through reeds as night air moves over water. Insects sing in darkness while boats pass silently under moonlight. Mesopotamia no longer belongs to any empire, Sumer, Babylon, Persia, or Greece. It belongs to time itself, layered with memory upon memory, carried forward by rivers toward futures no ruler can permanently control. And perhaps that is the quiet secret hidden within these plains between the rivers. Empires always imagine themselves permanent while they rise beneath bright banners and crowded markets. Yet the land remains long after their walls crumble. The roads continue stretching toward distant horizons. The canals slowly fill and empty again. Human ambition burns brightly for a moment, then softens into stories carried gently forward by history and drifting wind alike. Now the night grows deeper over Mesopotamia. The stars brighten above the dark water, while the breeze moves softly through the palm leaves beside the riverbanks. Ancient cities rest beneath the earth. Forgotten kings sleep within broken tombs. The canals shimmer faintly beneath silver moonlight as though remembering every civilization that ever crossed these fertile plains searching for power, safety, trade, or glory beside the flowing rivers. The sound of water becomes quieter now. The wind slows across the reeds. Somewhere in the far distance, a final lantern flickers beside the dark outline of a sleeping village. Human beings come and go across the centuries, carrying dreams, armies, fears, and kingdoms beside the rivers of Mesopotamia. Yet the rivers continue moving patiently toward the sea, unchanged in their ancient rhythm beneath the endless turning of the stars above. The script comes to a close. Thank you all for listening.